The forbidden eastern corridor of Buckingham Palace was a place whispered about among guards, but entered by almost none. Its doors had been sealed decades before, after a structural assessment deemed the wing unnecessary for modern use. But older guards knew better. They spoke of rooms once used for confidential meetings, unrecorded discussions, and private negotiations conducted far from the eyes of visiting dignitaries and unsuspecting staff. That wing carried a tension in the air, an old, lingering unease that Sergeant Rowan Avery had felt only once before, when he was a young recruit patrolling during a rare power outage. Now, years later, he found himself walking the same shadowed passage, boots silent on the aged floorboards that creaked faintly beneath the weight of history. Rowan was one of the palace's most trusted guards, a second-generation protector born into a tradition of service. His father had guarded the late queen during her quietest hours, and his stories had shaped Rowan's sense of duty long before he had worn a uniform. Tonight, Rowan was completing a final sweep of the eastern wing, after routine alarms had flickered on and off with unusual inconsistency. It was likely nothing, he told himself, a power fluctuation, a technical glitch, but duty required certainty, not assumption. The palace slept uneasily in the quiet hours before dawn, when even the slightest anomaly could mask something more dangerous. Rowan's hand rested on the curve of his baton, not from fear but from instinct. His senses sharpened as he moved deeper into the corridor, where only one dim amber light glowed above a dusty portrait of Queen Victoria. He paused, listening. The air felt still, yet charged, as though something had passed through only moments before. Rowan leaned closer to the old portrait, noticing that the dust along the frame had been disturbed. Faint smudges, suggesting a gloved hand had brushed against it recently. Someone had been here. And not long ago. Rowan inhaled slowly, steadying himself. This corridor was not on any path used by staff at night. Only senior-level royals, select archivists, and the king himself even possessed access codes to open its locked sections. The sense of wrongness deepened. He took another step, boots whispering over the wooden floor, every instinct telling him he was not alone. When the faintest murmur of voices reached him, Rowan froze. The words were too soft to distinguish at first. A hushed exchange carried through a half-open door at the far end of the corridor, a door that should have been sealed. Rowan stepped back into the shadows, adjusting his breath to silence. The corridor's dimness wrapped around him as he listened, heart beating in measured, controlled rhythm. The first voice he heard was low, hurried, and undeniably tense. The second voice, sharper, commanding, cut through the whisper like a blade. Rowan's pulse shifted. He recognized that voice. He had heard it many times during public events, ceremonies, and private briefings inside the palace. It belonged to Camilla, the queen consort. Rowan's jaw tightened slightly. He had never distrusted Camilla outright, but he had seen enough to sense when her tone carried a weight or intention not shown in public. And now, hearing her here in a corridor she had no sanctioned reason to enter, sent chills of unease down his spine. Her voice was clearer now, words measured, sharp with authority. "You will deliver exactly what I requested," she said. "No deviations, no delays, and above all, no record." Rowan leaned in closer, pressing his ear toward the narrow gap in the doorframe. The second voice responded quickly, almost trembling. "Your Majesty, the risk is substantial. If the king discovers—" Camilla cut him off. "He won't. Not if you follow instructions." This corridor was sealed to everyone except a select few. No one patrols this wing at night. Rowan closed his eyes in a moment of disbelief. She didn't know he was here. She didn't know the alarms had malfunctioned, or that his patrol had been extended. That small oversight, her assumption, was the only reason Rowan now heard details he was never meant to hear. The men inside continued, more fearful. "And the archives? They're under direct oversight now." Camilla gave a cold, short laugh. "Oversight can be bypassed if one knows where the blind spots lie. The documents will be removed quietly. I will deal with the king. You need only secure the rest." Rowan inhaled sharply, careful not to let the sound escape. Documents. Blind spots. Removal. Midnight in a forbidden corridor. The pieces began forming a shape that made Rowan's stomach tighten. He had walked into something far beyond a routine check. Camilla lowered her voice even more, yet Rowan could still hear the steel behind her words. This cannot be traced to me, and if anyone suspects, you will deny everything, understand? Her companion murmured agreement. Rowan's hand drifted to his radio, but he hesitated. Reporting prematurely could alert Camilla if any signal reached the wrong ears. The palace communication system, though secure, was not immune to interception by someone with the queen consort's influence. Rowan had to be certain of what he had heard, certain of what he would report, certain that the king himself should be the first to learn of this. But he needed more. One more sentence, one more detail, could change everything. As he leaned closer, a floorboard beneath his foot creaked softly. Rowan's heart constricted, breath halting. The murmured conversation inside the room stopped instantly. Silence fell complete, suffocating, deadly. Rowan pressed back into the shadows, barely daring to blink. After a moment that stretched too long, Camilla's voice cut through the stillness like ice. "Did you hear that?" The second voice responded shakily. "Perhaps just the old wood settling." Camilla didn't sound convinced. Her footsteps approached the door with slow, calculated precision. Rowan held his breath, body rigid. One more step, one more second, one more sound, and he would be discovered. The door began to open. The flicker of light along the corridor shifted as the crack widened. Rowan felt every muscle tighten, every instinct screaming at him to vanish, though he had nowhere to go. Camilla's shadow stretched across the floor first. Then her hand, gloved in dark fabric, slipped into view. She stepped out, gaze sweeping the corridor with chilling thoroughness. Rowan stayed absolutely still, praying the shadows concealed him. Camilla's companion emerged behind her, glancing over his shoulder nervously. The corridor remained silent, the palace holding its breath. After a long moment, Camilla gave a soft exhale. "We're done here," she whispered. "Lock the door. No trace." They turned away. Only when their footsteps faded did Rowan finally breathe again. But the truth was unavoidable. He had overheard Camilla making a midnight deal in a forbidden corridor, and whatever that deal involved was serious enough to freeze the entire palace once revealed. Rowan remained pressed against the cool stone wall long after Camilla and the unknown man had disappeared into the darkness beyond the bend of the corridor. His lungs still burned from holding his breath, though adrenaline masked most of the discomfort. He listened for several seconds more, waiting for any sign they had doubled back, but the silence remained steady and uninterrupted. Only then did he step away from the wall, his pulse still thundering with the weight of what he had just witnessed. The sealed door was now closed once again, its brass latch glinting faintly in the low amber light. Rowan approached it with slow, deliberate steps, his instincts urging caution even though the corridor was empty now. Kneeling, he examined the door closely. There were fresh scratches around the lock signs of recent tampering. Someone had used a manual key override rather than a digital code. That alone spoke volumes. No authorized passcode had been used to open the door. Camilla and her companion had entered the forbidden room through a method meant to leave no digital trace. Rowan reached for the handle, but stopped just short of touching it. The warmth of the metal could reveal whether they had just left, but if he smudged it with his own fingerprints, it could compromise evidence. Instead, he hovered his hand near the metal. It still radiated faint heat. Rowan exhaled softly. They had left only moments ago. This was not a conversation scheduled in advance. This was a clandestine meeting carried out under the assumption that no guard would ever pass through this forgotten wing at such an hour. But Rowan had, and because he had, he now carried the burden of truth on his shoulders. Rising to his full height, he scanned the corridor again, ensuring he was still alone. His mind raced with possibilities. Was Camilla orchestrating the removal of sensitive archives? Was someone assisting her from inside the palace's administrative ranks? And why choose a corridor that had been sealed for decades, unless the content of their discussion was something no one else could ever discover? Rowan's grip tightened around his radio once more. Reporting was protocol, but this was no ordinary breach, no ordinary conversation. If Camilla was involved in something clandestine, reporting through formal channels could cause his words to vanish or, worse, be intercepted. He had seen enough internal workings to know that not all authority structures were equal, and that influence flowed unpredictably in royal circles. If the wrong person heard even the vaguest hint of what he had witnessed, Rowan himself could become a target. He took a steadying breath, forcing his thoughts into order. There were only 3 people in the palace he could trust with information of this magnitude: King Charles, Prince William, and Commander Hughes, the head of the Royal Protection Unit. And even Hughes, though honorable, reported directly to individuals who might feel pressure to conceal rather than confront the truth. That left the King and Prince William as the only unquestionably safe options, but reaching either of them in the middle of the night required procedure, and procedure meant paperwork and questioning. Rowan needed something more concrete before he approached them. A detail, an object, a clue, something that confirmed the significance of what he had overheard. He looked once more toward the sealed room. Every instinct within him screamed that stepping inside could be dangerous, reckless, maybe even career-ending if interpreted as unauthorized intrusion. Yet another instinct, stronger, older, the one shaped by years under his father's stern guidance, told him that duty sometimes meant stepping into uncertainty. You protect the crown, his father used to say, not just by standing guard, but by seeing what others refuse to see. Rowan placed his hand lightly against the door, testing it. To his surprise, it wasn't locked. His stomach dropped. Camilla's companion had forgotten no, rushed so quickly in their exit that they had failed to secure it. That negligence meant no one else would come back to check it until morning. Rowan pushed the door open an inch at a time, ensuring it made no sound. The hinges groaned faintly, but only a whisper. Inside, stale, cold air drifted out, carrying the scent of old paper, dust, and something else, something metallic. He stepped inside, and the dim corridor light spilled just enough illumination to reveal outlines of old furniture draped with white sheets, stacks of archival boxes, and a long table in the center holding scattered documents. Rowan approached the table cautiously, eyes adjusting to the darkness. The boxes had labels dating back decades, some from the reign of the late queen, others from even earlier periods. But what drew Rowan's focus was a single open folder positioned at an angle, as though someone had been reviewing it moments before he arrived. He leaned over it, careful not to touch. The document inside had been partially removed, leaving behind only the bottom half of a page. 3 lines of handwriting remained visible, written in ink so faded it looked nearly gray. Rowan silently read the words, "If discovered, the implications would be catastrophic. This must remain sealed until the appropriate time, even from—" The sentence ended abruptly where the document had been torn away. Rowan stared at the fragment, a chill tracing down his spine. Someone had taken the top half. Someone wanted it removed tonight, and Camilla was orchestrating it. He scanned the rest of the table and noticed footprints in the dust, 2 sets. One belonging to Camilla, judging by their size and the distinctive pattern of her evening footwear. The second set larger, likely belonging to the nervous man with her. The tracks circled the table twice, then moved toward a narrow door at the back of the room. Rowan followed the tracks to that smaller door and gently pushed it open. It led to a hidden stairwell, descending into deeper darkness. He had never known such a passage existed. Just as he considered descending, a soft click echoed from the corridor behind him. Rowan spun around, instinctively reaching for his baton. A figure stood at the threshold of the room, silhouetted against the faint corridor light. For a split second, Rowan's heart seized in his chest. Had Camilla returned? Had someone followed him? But the figure stepped forward, and the dim glow revealed not Camilla, nor the man from earlier, but someone Rowan recognized immediately. Commander Hughes. Rowan's pulse steadied, though not by much. Hughes gazed at him with narrowed eyes, expression unreadable. "Sergeant Avery," Hughes said quietly, "why are you in a sealed corridor at this hour?" Rowan swallowed, knowing the next words he chose could determine everything that happened next. Rowan's mind raced. As Commander Hughes stepped farther into the forbidden room, his boots leaving clean impressions in the dust beside the older tracks. The commander's expression remained stern, unreadable. But there was something else too, an intensity in his eyes that suggested he had not stumbled upon this moment by chance. Rowan straightened instinctively, though his heartbeat continued to pound. Hughes closed the door behind him with a soft thud, sealing them inside the dim chamber. The single overhead light flickered weakly when Hughes pulled the chain, casting the room in a pale, uneven glow. It revealed all the more starkly the disturbed boxes, the open folder, and the faint footprints circling the long central table. When Hughes finally spoke, his voice was low and controlled, the tone of a man who had already come to several conclusions before asking a single question. This wing has been sealed for decades. You were assigned to the nursery corridor tonight. Hughes paused, his gaze traveling slowly from the table to the hidden stairwell door Rowan had opened. Explain. Rowan inhaled carefully, keeping his voice even. Sir, I witnessed Queen Consort Camilla enter this corridor with an unidentified male. They used a manual key override to open this door. They spoke about something being ready to move and that the meeting had to stay hidden. Hughes didn't react immediately. His jaw tightened, but his eyes remained fixed on Rowan, assessing, analyzing, measuring every word. And you entered this room because? Rowan's answer came firmly, rooted in the duty, drilled into him since childhood. Because I believed it posed a threat, sir. If there is unauthorized access to sealed archives, it could endanger the crown, the monarchy, or sensitive history. Hughes let the silence stretch for a long moment, and Rowan felt the weight of it press against him. Finally, Hughes nodded once slow, controlled. Show me exactly what you saw. Rowan stepped toward the table, gesturing carefully to the open folder without touching anything. The document inside was torn. Someone removed the top half. The remaining text suggests it contained information considered catastrophic if released. Hughes leaned down, his eyes scanning the fragment, and a visible shadow crossed his expression. Though Hughes rarely betrayed emotion, Rowan could sense tension radiating from him. The commander shifted his attention to the footprints circling the table, crouching to study them. He traced the outlines with gloved fingers, identifying the direction and spacing. Two individuals walked around this table more than once, Hughes said quietly. They were searching for something, not just reviewing it. Rowan nodded. I believe they came for the document that was torn away. Hughes rose to his feet with slow deliberation. And then there's this. He turned toward the narrow door leading to the hidden stairwell. You opened it? Rowan nodded. Yes, sir. The footprints lead toward it. Hughes approached the stairwell's edge, shining a small pocket torch into the descending darkness. The beam vanished quickly, swallowed by the narrow, steep shaft. This passage runs beneath the old record rooms, Hughes murmured. I'd heard rumors of sealed sublevels, but nothing concrete. Not on any modern blueprint. He clicked off the torch and turned to Rowan. You did the right thing by not going down alone. Rowan felt a subtle release of tension in his chest, though fear still stirred beneath. Sir, what do you think they were moving? Hughes didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked back to the central table, then to the far end of the room where several sheet-covered crates sat undisturbed. He lifted the corner of one sheet, revealing a heavy wooden box secured with iron braces. The tag nailed to its side was so faded it was nearly unreadable, but Rowan could make out one phrase, personal correspondence restricted. Hughes lowered the cloth and spoke quietly. There are items here that predate the late Queen's accession. Some of these documents relate to decisions made during times of political tension. If someone wished to rewrite a narrative or erase traces of past conflicts, they might look here. Rowan felt a cold ripple travel down his spine. And Camilla would have reason? Hughes didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, voice dropping to something even more serious. There are factions in this palace, Sergeant. Individuals who want influence over how history is recorded, over what the king sees and doesn't see. If you overheard her arranging a midnight deal, then this may be far more dangerous than unauthorized removal. It may be part of a larger effort to control information before it reaches His Majesty. Rowan swallowed, feeling the gravity settle over him. Sir, what do we do? Hughes studied him for several long seconds. For now, we observe, we document, and we trace the chain of access. Then, unexpectedly, Hughes stepped closer and lowered his voice to a near whisper. Sergeant Avery, listen carefully. You must not speak of this to anyone, not another guard, not staff, not even those you believe trustworthy. If what you overheard is part of an organized effort, then speaking to the wrong person could compromise everything. including your safety. Rowan nodded, understanding instantly. Hughes's next words struck him with quiet impact. You will accompany me when I brief the king. The idea sent a jolt through Rowan's chest. Meeting King Charles under any circumstances carried immense weight, but bringing forward evidence against the queen consort herself was unfathomably dangerous. Yet there was no hesitation in Hughes's expression. We cannot delay, the commander continued. Every hour increases the chance those documents are destroyed, moved, or used. Rowan straightened, nodding again. Yes, sir. Just as Hughes turned toward the door, a faint metallic clatter echoed from somewhere beyond the stairwell. Rowan and Hughes froze simultaneously. The noise was soft, but unmistakable. Something had shifted below. Someone was down there, moving through the sealed passages. Hughes held up a hand, signaling Rowan to remain silent. They both listened intently. Another sound drifted upward this time, the unmistakable scrape of a boot against stone. Someone was climbing the hidden stairwell. Hughes extinguished the overhead light in one swift motion, plunging the room back into near darkness. Rowan's heartbeat surged. Hughes whispered, "Do not move." They waited in that silent tension for several long, stretched seconds. Then, from the depths of the stairwell, a faint shadow shifted. A silhouette began to rise. Rowan's breath caught in his throat as a hand appeared on the top stair. Hughes reached for his sidearm soundlessly, raising it with icy precision. Rowan braced himself for the unknown intruder to emerge fully, but the figure stopped halfway up, hesitating. Then, a whisper floated upward, raspy, strained, and trembling. "Help, please!" Hughes did not lower his weapon, though Rowan could see the faint shift in the commander's stance as he registered the trembling voice rising from the stairwell. The shadowed figure remained, hunched on the top steps, half concealed by darkness, one hand clutching the stone as though struggling to stay upright. Rowan took a cautious step nearer, but Hughes's quiet gesture halted him. "Identify yourself," Hughes commanded, his voice low but carrying unmistakable authority. The figure coughed, a rough, scraping sound, then lifted his head just enough for the dim corridor light to brush across a pale, sweat-sheened face. Rowan recognized him instantly, the man who had accompanied Camilla earlier. His hair was disheveled, his shirt collar undone, and a thin streak of blood traced down from his temple. The man wheezed as he attempted to speak again, his breath uneven. "Please. They left me down there." Hughes moved forward a fraction, though his weapon remained trained. "Who left you?" The man's eyes darted around the room, as if searching for something that wasn't there. I didn't know what she intended." Rowan's pulse sharpened. "What did she intend?" The man swallowed, pushing himself one step higher. His voice cracked as he answered. "She said we were retrieving documents for the king's historical review. She said it was authorized. But when we reached the sub-level, I realized she wasn't telling me everything." Rowan exchanged a look with Hughes. The commander's expression hardened further. "What happened next?" The man wiped the blood from his brow, the movement shaky. "She told me to pull a marked file. When I opened the crate, I saw what it was. It wasn't something to transfer. It was something to hide." He shook his head, breathing raggedly. "I tried to refuse. She told me it was too late." Rowan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "What was in the crate?" The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Letters. Private correspondence from decades ago. They could ruin reputations, old alliances, old conflicts. But that wasn't the worst part. There were other boxes. Boxes she didn't want anyone to know existed." Hughes's grip on his weapon tightened. "And she left you behind?" The man nodded, shame flickering across his features. "When I hesitated, her aid struck me. I fell. Everything went black for a while. When I woke up, they were gone. They sealed the lower door behind them." Rowan froze at that. The sealed door. Camilla had left the man to die in the darkness if he couldn't escape. "I tried to climb out," the man whispered. "But I heard them. They said they'd make sure no one came down here until morning." Hughes exhaled sharply, the closest thing to visible anger Rowan had ever witnessed from him. The commander stepped forward and holstered his weapon. "Get up!" he ordered, though his voice softened slightly. "We're taking you to medical. Then you're giving a full statement directly to His Majesty." The man looked startled. The king? No, no, I can't. If she finds out... Hughes cut him off with a raised hand. Enough! You're already involved. The only way forward is through the truth. Rowan stepped in, offering his arm to help the injured man to his feet. As they pulled him fully into the room, Hughes flicked his torch on again and shone it briefly into the stairwell depths. Rowan caught a glimpse of darkness swallowing the narrow passageway, and a shiver traced down his spine. Hughes closed the small door firmly and sealed the latch. "We will return here," he said quietly, "but not without authorization from the king himself." With the injured man leaning heavily on Rowan, the three moved slowly out of the archive room. Hughes paused to lock the outer door, using a code Rowan didn't recognize, one reserved for the highest-level command protocols. The corridor beyond was even darker now, as though the palace itself had sensed the tension beneath its stone ribs. As they began down the long, narrow hallway, the injured man spoke again in a strained whisper. "You need to understand. She's been meeting him for months." Hughes shot him a sharp look. "Meeting who?" The man hesitated, then answered with visible dread. "The advisor. The one she trusts more than the palace staff. They've been selecting documents to shape the narrative." Rowan frowned. "What narrative?" The man's voice thinned to a thread. "The monarchy's future. What the public should believe about its past. What the king sees. What the Prince of Wales never learns." Hughes's jaw clenched. "You're saying she's filtering history before it reaches the king?" The man nodded weakly. "And tonight, they agreed on the final transfer. She said once the letters were removed, everything else would fall into place." Hughes stopped walking. Rowan halted too, adjusting the man's weight against his shoulder. The corridor was silent, except for the faint hum of the palace's aging ventilation system. Hughes turned slowly toward Rowan, his expression grave. "This cannot wait until morning. We go to the king now." Rowan nodded without hesitation. The injured man, however, stiffened in fear. "She'll know. She'll know the moment something changes." Hughes gave him a firm, unwavering look. "And that is why we act quickly." They moved again, navigating the silent hallways that stretched like veins through the sleeping palace. With each step, Rowan felt the magnitude of their mission grow heavier. They reached the central staircase that led toward the king's private study, and Hughes used his encrypted badge to unlock the restricted landing. Just as they turned the final corner, a soft echo of footsteps drifted from behind them. Rowan instinctively shifted, positioning the injured man against the wall while he and Hughes turned in unison. The footsteps came closer, measured, deliberate, and unmistakably purposeful. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. Not a guard, not a staff member, Camilla. She stood in the center of the corridor, her expression composed yet cold, as though she had been waiting for them. Her eyes moved from Rowan to Hughes, to the trembling man clinging to Rowan's arm. Her lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "Out for a midnight stroll, gentlemen?" Hughes stepped forward, his posture rigid with defiance. "This ends tonight," he said quietly. Camilla raised one eyebrow. "No. It begins tonight." Her gaze flicked to the injured man. He wasn't supposed to make it out. Rowan felt the man tremble violently. Hughes lifted his radio, but before he could speak, Camilla's voice rang out sharply. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." And from the corner of the hall, two unfamiliar figures stepped into view, blocking the path behind them. They wore dark suits, not palace uniforms. Rowan exhaled slowly as the corridors tightened around them like a vice. The real confrontation had just begun.